it's not necessarily doing better. It's a matter of having a different take. I mean, this is why we listen to cover songs. Well, that's an interesting take. Just as the Dan Band's take of Total Eclipse is rather interesting. But I actually, this makes me want to ask you about what the song selection process is for each particular album. I mean, does this come from the producer? If Steinman was on board, did he pick the particular songs?
He wasn't on board. No, I tell you.
Not for this one, but I mean, is it? When do you give it to the producer? When do you actually choose the songs?
Well, when I worked with Jim way back in 1981, I think we started, and the album came out in '83. We were like. He wanted to meet me, so I went to his apartment and I met him, and we were playing. I took some demos that I'd been given and saved up over the a year or so that I'd had an idea that I wanted to do. And he played me some tracks as well. But then I went away for 3 weeks, and then he came back. He called me back, and he'd written Total Eclipse of the Heart for me. And he did write it for me, not like Meat Loaf said he'd wrote it for him.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I mean, based off of that whole fracas between Meat Loaf and Simon and the whole... the lawsuits came later, but I mean, were you aware of that going in and getting Jim on board for this particular album? I mean, there's obviously a history of lawsuits
I heard some
and litigation.
real funny stories, but the reason why I asked Jim Steinman to work with me in the first place is because I just finished with RCA Records. I'd been on them for 5 years, and I saw the old Grey Whistle Test, a television program in the UK, and Meat Loaf was on there. Actually, Ricky Lee Jones was on the same show. I never forget it. It's just, she knocked me out. But when I heard Meat Loaf singing Bat Out of Hell, I thought, this is incredible. This is the kind of music that I know I can sing, And so when I went to Sony, because they were signing me, they asked me who would I like to work with. And I said, well, I'd love to work with the guy that writes and produces for Meat Loaf. And they said, yeah, that's Jim Steinman. He's pretty hot at the moment. You'll be lucky to get him. I said, well, if you don't ask, you don't get. So we asked him, and then we got together. But no, it was we'd play each other's songs and whatever. But he put the band together, and I think I was very lucky. I had Max Weinberg on drums, Me Street Band, and Terry Britton on his name now. Terry Britton? No, it's not Terry Britton, is it? The keyboard player. Oh, he's going to kill me. Yeah. Anyway, Tony Britton, I think it was.
Yeah, that's it.
And on keyboards, and we had Rick Derringer on lead guitar, and we had Steve Buslow on bass. It was just great, and I forgot what I was saying now. It's fun making the album anyway.
To take this answer that you've, I'm sure, offered many journalists over the last couple of decades from a slightly different tack, I was curious as to a couple of things. First of all, how demanding was Steinman upon you? I mean, I saw a YouTube video, a 3-part YouTube video of you and Steinman, but it seemed to me quite rehearsed, you and him sitting by the piano with the camera, and that to me, I don't think that was the actual rehearsal.
No, it wasn't. That was... I think that was for a show called Ladybirds, was it?
I have no idea. I just found it on YouTube, and I was like, "Oh wow, it's actual rehearsal." No, it isn't. It's clearly not, because we were miming the actual final song. But I mean, to sidestep that and find out what the actual rehearsal process was and how things were perfected. Because
let me tell you then.
Sure.
Let me get a bloody word in edgeways. What happened was, right? He would insist on having 9 different takes, right? So the band were all in the studio. I was in the booth, and we did 9. I sang live the same time as the band. I did it 9 times. And then he takes the reel-to-reel home in the night, and I had like a copy on cassette then it was. And we listen, he's listening in his apartment, I'm listening at the hotel over and over at these 9 different takes to see which take had the best feel to it. And then we'd go in the studio the next day and work on the best take. But then, I mean, he is crazy, man. He uses like 64 tracks, as many people do now. But he wants so many versions of the same song.
How many versions were there?
I tell you, well, there was 9 different versions. But like the vocal, he I reckon the first vocal, I'm pretty good in the studio. I'm very on key, and I don't go off key. And, to me, it all sounded fine. But he wants everything so perfect, that he'll drop in all the time, But that's the way Jim works, so I just go along with it, and he takes forever, but it's worth it in the end.
But give me an example of how this perfectionist streak applied to your vocals. I mean, was it down to a specific phoneme or a specific unit of actually what you were singing, or what?
The breathing and things like that, oh, Bonnie, can you hear a breath there? Oh, I gotta breathe, you know what I mean? It's really, it is difficult, but it's not so difficult, I mean, I loved working with him.
And all of the tracks on Fast and the Speed of Night are roughly around 7-8 minute opuses.
And I'm wondering,
they
had to be edited.
They were longer. Was there some sort of 35-minute version of Total Eclipse or something? Or what?
No, for the single, I think Total Eclipse was 8 minutes long, and they had to edit it down to 4 minutes 20 or 5
for radio,
something like that. And he was gutted that he had to do that, but it would never have got played. I was still worrying about it being played because it was still a long song for them days, But it got massive airplay, and it was number one nearly all over the world.
Yeah. I actually, to switch tacks a little bit, I wanted to ask you about an incident that I drug up out of the South Wales Evening Post. Apparently, in 2006, you serenaded the retiring pilot on an Air France jet, and most passengers were delighted by this, but apparently a group of Belgians claimed that they were traumatized by your singing. And I love this story, but there was no resolution to it because there were lawsuits, there were legal actions. I mean, did you have to go into court for this? Did you have to stand? Did someone have to actually, an expert witness have to come in and say, okay, this is really why it's traumatic or why it's not traumatic? Or, what happened here? How did this get resolved?
What happened was, we were on this flight coming back from Mauritius, and I can't remember what airline it was, but anyway, there was a lot of Belgian people on this flight. And when we got on the flight, I thought, this is strange, the pilot, the co-pilot, not the guy that was actually flying the plane, but one of the guys, the pilot, he was going to be retiring, and he was covered in badges. They were having a kind of party. You know what I mean? They were covered in badges, and his hat was full of them, and all over his jacket.
This
and
is what retiring pilots do.
The girls were very high spirited. The air hostesses, and they said, "Oh, Bonnie, he's going to be retiring. I mean, would you mind singing Total Eclipse of the Heart to him?" So I only sang about 3 lines or something like that, and everybody was like, it was great, But I think the Belgians were trying to get some money back or something. I don't know. I didn't sing like they said over the mic or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it was just as I was coming on the plane.
Was the lawsuit dropped? Was it settled?
I never heard anything else about it.
Really? I'll have to investigate this or something.